Can you guys believe the absolute stinkers of games that have come out as of recent? It's probably the end of video games as we know it. Like, everything sucks. Most AAA games for a while feel like they've been made by some sort of committee or an algorithm, making the lowest common denominator slop. Some of the best games to come out last year were remakes. Shout out to Resident Evil 4, Dead Space, and Metroid Prime Remastered. A bunch of franchises that have been loved for decades have seemingly been dug up just to torture everyone who enjoyed those franchises in the first place. Because seemingly part of living is just watching everything you once loved become horrible because the passion isn't there anymore, and the people who once worked on the project are now gone, with a cynical cash grab being all that's left. Even this year, licensed games came back with a vengeance that would make one company notorious for making atrocious games. Seriously, the same way it made Gollum, Kong, and the Walking Dead game, that all feel like Unity asset swaps that were generated by ChatGPT. Gaming is over and never coming back. We're gonna have to revert back to arcades. This is what I would say if we didn't get Baldur's Gate 3, Lethal Company, or an assortment of other indie developed games that are really good, with most only asking at most 27 USD instead of 60 or even 70 wretched big bucks. But then 2024 started off with a pretty gosh darn silly, goofy, crazy little game called Helldivers 2. So Helldivers, have you guys ever played the first Helldivers? It's a pretty interesting game. It has a lot of that charm and personality that's in the second one. Things like managed democracy and being so steeped in the idea of becoming heroes and going on tours that you could swear service was also a guarantee of citizenship, like its Starship Troopers, but it's also way more pessimistic. Even the game itself in its tutorial tells you how you're going to be brutally disposed of by your own incompetence, or the three enemies of Super Earth that yearn to occupy our perfect little planets. The building blocks that make Helldivers are all there. The part that translates the most perfectly from the first game to the second game is none other than the stratagems, and the input minigames for objectives. In the first Helldivers, all the minigames are ones that consist of directional button inputs. You have some traversal functionality like sprinting and hitting the deck to dodge, but health slowly regens and the only way you can get up from being down is by spamming a button. You get some other fun goodies like the style still being there and that stuff that makes you feel like an orbital drop shop trooper from Halo. The game though is an overhead twin stick shooter that uses community playtime and completions of missions to liberate planets for Super Earth to control, much like how it's used in the second game. There's also some NPCs in your ship, and they really like to take you straight to Yap City where they make you the new mayor, if you just try to talk to them once. But you do get some pretty cool things like the bestiary to find out what things are, and to find out what the Super Earth Ministry of Truth wants you to know, so you can spread managed democracy effectively. So a group of eggheads decided that it was time to make a sequel to the first Helldivers. It might be a new group of developers, it might be the same team, I didn't pay attention. Either way, Helldivers 2 was slotted to come out almost a decade after the first game, and they had to get in a big group and ask themselves a question. What is the biggest step forward they can make in the Helldivers franchise? They decided to go for something that would make the game less niche, instead make it something that would make it much more accessible for a larger audience. Instead of being a top-down twin-tick shooter game with self-paced Dance Dance Revolution for the fingers, it's now got all that Dance Dance Revolution goodness packaged in the modern-day technological advancements of 2024, while also getting some big backing money from Sony, making it a PC and PS5 exclusive, and a third-person shooter game. So what happens when you try to make a game like this with this crock pot? Maybe you get something like an undercooked roast that lacks the flavor and is a bit stale, that doesn't capture the magic of the first game, that could have too many cooks in the kitchen during development, making it just kind of a flop. But that's the nightmare scenario, and that nightmare scenario is not what occurred, and instead we got a game that, while not particularly innovating on the genre of third-person shooters, it has an amazing job at being a mechanically tight, fun game to play. That is one of the most cinematic games on the market right now, that has a presentation that wears its inspirations on its shoulder, making it a really freaking rad game. There are some issues though. As seems almost customary, no game can come out without a few issues. Ever since you came out and ruined everything. Yes, I'm talking about you, Fortnite. I still enjoy playing you though. The Battle Pass and premium item currencies are in every game, including Helldivers now, which is something you really hate to see, especially when the game already comes with a price tag. That can force your hand with the fear of missing out to spend more money on a game. Because the freedom of expression through style uses premium currency in this game, so if you want to be an individual, you have to give them money. But I'm kind of complaining about nothing because Helldivers 2 does something that a lot of these other games wouldn't do. Super credits, which is the game's premium currency, are able to be obtained through other ways than just buying it. You can search for them in in-game maps. With you being able to find around 40 super credits per hour if you're really searching for them, which means that if you're spending a full 8-hour shift doing mainly open field battles for democracy, you can get an average of 320 super credits per play session, which isn't exactly the best turnaround, but at least it gives you the opportunity to not spend an extra cent on this game if you're willing to grind. There are also 2 battle passes in the game right now, which is a red flag, especially when one of them, gosh darn battle passes, is locked behind 10 whole United States doubloons worth of super credits. This would be really bad because the pieces of armor, weapons, and grenades are locked behind these passives. But unlike other battle passes, this game's passes last forever. So it's more of a permanent progression system add-on, which is probably one of the best Battle Pass systems of all time. Deep Rock Galactic's Battle Passes are way better though. There's no progression in them, they're just cosmetics, and they're all for free. And the game was like $20 less. With armor and weapons being unlocked in more natural gameplay ways. Games being a live service also suck quite a lot because of how a game will no longer be accessible to play ever again if the servers go offline. Which is still a large issue that can still happen and might happen any day to any one of the live service games you enjoy. Rip Club Penguin. Of course, you have small communities that keep the game alive through their own personal servers, but still, officially, it's defunct. Boy, doesn't that new gaming industry standard suck? I would have to say it's probably not an issue right now, since Helldivers 1 servers are still up and running and got nowhere near the same amount of media attention as Helldivers 2 did. Plus, the servers for Helldivers 2 kinda sucked for a while. Mainly because I think Sony and Arrowhead Games didn't think Helldivers 2 was gonna get as big of a player base as it did because the servers were constantly full on days where people were off of work. So you couldn't get into a game that you just bought, but besides those few horrible weeks, it just got fixed and it's been like that for like a month. So it's all good and chill now. The live service model of the game mainly makes sense because of the main premise of the game outside of the gameplay loop, which is to liberate unique planets and have the enemies of Super Earth attack said planets in this giant galaxy, with the entire conflict being controlled by one dev, Joel, where he's the war master who gets the final say on how the map is updated, almost being like a D&D dungeon master for our gaming sessions. But this being like one of the only times I've seen live service systems been done correctly, besides maybe like in Fortnite. But it's really weird for games like Payday 3 for some reason. But having no offline or solo mode sucks. But I hope that you've noticed throughout my criticisms of the game, they have either been resolved or have an asterisk next to them saying that they are horrible business practices that bog down and bring down the movement of video games in general. But in Helldivers, it's dealt with in a way that mitigates most of the issues. Because you can tell these developers probably just had to put these into the game because of a company mandate, and they aren't seeking to actually prey on their player base. They probably hate the current state of gaming as much as we do. Let's just say there's a reason this little known AA game is far more liked, more than quadruple A Assassin's Creed Black Flag, but with a fifth of the gameplay loop and functionality. If you're not picking up the supply drop that I'm putting down, the game is really solid and works around toxic anti-consumer practices in ways that make the game feel a lot more manageable and a lot less soulless. And also, in general, it's just really freaking well designed. I think a baby that's been watching nothing but brain rot Skibbity Toilet can probably understand how this game plays. You got a loadout of a primary and a secondary weapon, you have stance select that changes how recoil works on those weapons. You get a dive to get out of the way of immediate damage. That's a downside that you actually have to get up. You have to go around the map and deal with objectives and deal with some mini games along the way. Even though it's quite bare bones, it works perfectly and everything makes sense, especially with the instructions that are given to you in the game. It feels good to trot around and use the weapons in the game that provided work and sound amazing. The small minutiae of everything melds together in a way games usually don't do anymore, being seamless seamless. I think that it can not only be felt when you play the game, but the fluidity of the gameplay is satisfying and can be felt even while watching it, making people go, man, I really want to play this game when they see it on like a TikTok, making those Xbox players sweat. I'm so sorry that you can't play the game, by the way. We need all the soldiers we can get to spread democracy. The weapons feel satisfying or easy to understand with the movement system and have the iconic Helldivers dive, being put into a mechanically competent and incredibly well-made package. So the game's really freaking cool, and I think everyone who's played it can tell you that. I haven't really heard anybody say that they have an issue with the game besides that the game is lacking content after playing it for 80 hours, like any game would, besides, you know, the ones that are 100-hour long RPGs with multiple classes and branching storylines. Nah, this is a game where you drop in with your homies and get some stuff done and tootsie slide back to a ship to do it again. The game is simple, and you weren't expecting something amazingly expansive out of a AA experience. This is a perfect size for a game like this. And if you couldn't tell, the game has some crazy presentation too because of the amount of graphical fidelity with the amount of explosions that can pass by with how cinematic eagle or orbital drop flybys can be. With one of the most iconic ones now being the 500-kilogram bomb, which are crazy to watch, especially when you're diving out of the way of bugs or automaton blasts alike. While that little skull counter on the bottom of your screen goes from 0 all the way to at least a flat 30 on bugs or bots. I love you, Helldivers 2 and Arrowhead Games. Thank you for making a game that has come out in a turbulent time for gaming while being a really solid experience that has amazing production value that makes for a unique gaming experience because of its combination of inspirations used to make it. I enjoy Helldivers so much, and if you can, please give it a try. That's all I got for now. Till next video, fellas. In 2 weeks, though. I'm taking a little hiatus to make a big one.